Welcome, friends. You have summoned me to show you around these walls which have seen many changes, which I, the spirit of Chillington Manor, have watched for centuries. The history of my manor stretches back over 700 years. Today, the buildings contain wonderful objects and are called Maidstone Museum. I do enjoy having the museum people here, but it was not always thus. Together we will unravel the story of these walls. Come, let us take a tour of Chillington Manor's earliest story. Chillington's manor house has always stood right at the southernmost tip of its estate. The estate stretched northwards up to the foot of the downs and covered an area of what you today would count as 150 football pitches. 700 years ago, I watched quarrymen digging stone from the estate quarries, wheat being stacked in the fields, and animals driven to market. I saw fruit picked in orchards and water raised from the river. Little changed over the first few centuries of the estate's existence for the ordinary people. Tenants who lived in the scattered cottages, the farmers and rivermen, good wives and carters, farriers and weavers carried on making a living from the land and paying their dues to the owner. Those owners were the Archbishops of Canterbury, who kept the estate until eventually Archbishop Thomas Cranmer passed it on to Henry VIII. This is his chair, and he decreed that any lady sitting in it must forfeit a kiss. And then Henry's son Edward sold Chillington's estate in 1549 to Lord Cobham. I never saw Cobham here. He rented Chillington's estate out to the Maplestones, who bought it after a while. Now they were an interesting family. The Maplestone name lives on in Maidstone to this day. Come look at where the Maplestones' medieval manor house once stood. It was pulled down 150 years ago, by which time it had been built around and was just a storeroom with a toppling roof, which folks called the Rat's Castle. But it was once a grand hall, with a central fire and smoke curling up towards the roof. A staircase was built outside the house once the first floor was put in. Those medieval stairs have gone now, replaced by an observatory, and the medieval house replaced by a chapel. But the lady of the manor, Joan Maplestone, wanted more than the draughty medieval house which had been standing for over 200 years by the 1550s. I saw her urging her husband Peter to provide a better dwelling, more in keeping with their status. Mind you, it was surprising he had any status left after being on the wrong side of the rebellion by Wyatt against Queen Mary, when she wanted to marry the Catholic Philip of Spain. Peter Maplestone was fined a tidy sum of money for his part and could ill afford a new house, so he raised funds by mortgaging land for £400. And this is what Peter Maplestone built with that £400. A beautiful brick house in the latest style with 3 floors and a grand staircase to sweep you upstairs to the family's withdrawing room, their private space. The house was solidly fashioned, although the passing of time has curved the old beams. I oft watched Peter and Joan and their son sit here in the evenings. When they looked from these windows, they saw the houses and inns of the town with 2,000 souls, and they heard the rumble of carts and hooves on Week Street. To the north, they gazed over their estate lands. Downstairs, I listened to the gossip of servants in the scullery and kitchens, separated from the great hall by a screen whose wood still feels warm to the touch. Heat came from large fireplaces, and although their flames went out long ago, the museum people, I do enjoy having them here, have displayed pieces that would not look out of place being used by the Maplestones as they warmed their cockles. Peter and Joan had their initials carved into another fireplace. Those were the glory days. At the front of Peter's new house were built 2 wings so that a courtyard was formed between them. Just like the once grand medieval house, those old Tudor wings had also grown draughty and cheerless as the centuries rolled by. What you see today are Victorian buildings which replaced those wings in the 1870s, with Tudor style in mind. So, 450 years ago, the medieval house and the new Tudor house were standing together here. Our last visit is to the long gallery, which joined those two houses. This lower level was once open to the air. I recall the goodwives drying their wet linens here. It is all covered now, and the museum folk, have I mentioned them before, have placed objects from around the world on both levels. Come, let's see inside. Follow me. Here women strolled and schemed and laughed, men plodded and plotted and bartered, and children chased each other. They've done this here for centuries, and still do. Boo! You can find out who bought my manor next and what they did inside these walls by watching the second film. There are fantastic feasts, battles, and cider.